Hi there, my name is Greg Smith. This is the introduction into my leading video, which is my third and final video for my Lamar graduate program. For this video, I chose the option in regards to staff development and recommendations that we can make as far as a leadership team goes to meet the needs of our campus for additional staff development resources and things that we can do on our campus to improve those. So what I did as the leader of this group is we chose to use pretty much the committee for our campus improvement plan that we did the past couple of weeks, and just kind of extend on that using the needs that were presented in our campus improvement plan to come up with plans and recommendations for our leadership team to give to our academic dean, who was also part of our meeting. So what we used was an English teacher who's also part of our ELL program, so she had some good background information to give us as far as our English language learners, which was one of our needs. We also had our literacy coach on campus whose sole job is staff development and improving our English scores, which has been a big need on our campus. We also had a CTE teacher, Coach Tremmel, to kind of talk about needs of the CTE department and things that they would be able to contribute. And also, again, myself and our academic dean, Michelle Duhan, who's also on campus, who was our previous director of CTE on campus. So basically, again, I'll reflect on this after the actual video part. But we held this meeting on campus in a conference room in which I handed everybody their agendas, gave them a pack of information, which included our campus improvement plan. I highlighted the needs. I also highlighted a list of staff development options that we could look at further to meet those needs. And through that agenda, we kind of talked about each of the different categories of the campus improvement plan and questions and strategies that we could use to help figure out those needs and establish different recommendations for our campus. So again, you'll see throughout the video those members of that leadership team and hopefully my leadership ability to host that meeting, which I thought went very well, and I will reflect on it at the end. Thank you.
Oh wait, I took a picture. Sorry. Okay.
All right, good morning, everybody. We're here today to go over our campus improvement plan as it relates to staff development for next year and the needs of our campus. We're here with our leadership team of 5 members of our campus. Everybody has their agenda in front of them, as well as the packet of information to go over our current campus improvement plan, and then some other suggestions as it relates to our staff development on our campus. On the agenda, number 1 is going to be the introduction of our members today. So we'll just kind of go around the table, introduce ourselves, and tell us what our title is on our current campus.
Hi, my name is Natalia Heckman. I teach ESOL classes as well as reading classes, grades 9 through 11, and I'm the ESL representative for the campus.
I'm Erin Clement. I'm the literacy coach on campus, and I work with English grades 9 through 12.
I'm John Trimmel. I am the engineering department chair and the tennis coach.
I'm Michelle Duhan. I'm the CTE specialist and the academic dean.
And of course, I'm Greg Smith, assistant athletic coordinator on campus, and also work in the Health Science Academy with Ms. Duhan. Number 2 on our agenda today, we're going to talk about the purpose of what we're doing today as it relates to our campus improvement plan and our staff development opportunities. I know last week members of this leadership team were involved in the campus improvement plan, and each of us were given certain sections to help Ms. Duhan and the campus as far as those needs are on our campus. There are several needs that we found, and we'll discuss those in a little bit. But we're also going to try to find out different ways in which we can include staff developments next year to fit those needs of our campus, which include obviously literacy. That's why we have our literacy coach on this leadership team to get that taken care of and kind of look at some different things as far as funding goes, time opportunities go, and different things we can allocate in order to improve our campus and those different needs. So I think the first part we're going to look at is our part of our campus improvement plan was the staff quality, our recruitment, and the retention of our teachers, to kind of make a closer look at what our current staff is, how we retain our teachers, and what we kind of need to look at as far as those go. I know a lot of this had to do with Ms. Clements, part of the campus improvement plan. So I think we're going to kind of open it up right now to what we think our needs are as far as our teacher retention goes. So if anybody has anything to add in relation to that.
Well, I think, after getting feedback from teachers, we kind of assess where the need is. And so my role was new on campus this year, and it was in an effort to kind of bridge the gap between, reading deficiencies and high school content. There's not really any kind of reading instruction in high school, so that was, one of the changes we made this year based on the needs of our campus specifically. That's not something the district did, but it's something that, just our campus did, specifically in the English department.
What exactly role did you have in the literacy coach for this past year? I know that was one of our big ones from last year. So what exactly did they ask you to do in that role?
So I worked really closely with teachers. We looked at the way lessons were set up. We looked at how the students were comprehending, how they were performing on local tests, benchmarks, and then we tried to isolate which concepts they were not doing well in, and then we tried to reteach those, and then measure their progress between, their first administration of the test and then how they did after the interventions.
Did we include a lot more staff development between last year and this year from that campus improvement plan?
Actually, that's one of the things that we have talked about this year. The role was new, and next year we're going to try to implement more staff development. So that the role of a literacy coach was kind of twofold here, in that we take the staff development, and then I'm kind of on campus to help push it along. A lot of times we go to staff development, it's kind of like, okay, you're there one day and then you never look at it again, and so my role was to kind of help facilitate that on campus with whatever the teachers chose to do. And next year, after we looked at kind of how this year went, we figured out that it needs to look a little bit different, and so we will work on, and that's still kind of not concrete, Ms. Duhan.
We're going to do more pullouts with students. So rather than doing the literacy coach and working with the teachers, we do have strong teachers. They have good strategies. We need to target students more. This year we worked mainly with the teachers in hopes that it trickled down, and we did some STAR classes where we did some level grouping or leveling with the students. That's not necessarily the best practice, putting all of the low kids in one classroom. They don't have good role models. Mm-hmm. This coming year, based on that and some teacher feedback, we're making class sizes smaller, and the students will be incorporated. But with that being said, they still need intervention, and so that's where Ms. Clement will come in, and we will target the students that weren't successful on STAR, or that might be struggling with a particular skill, and we will do some pullouts. It won't be the same students each time. It's going to be on a need, whatever they need at the time. We also are going to have Ms. Clement work with the social studies department with some professional development and start doing some cross-curricular work. Social studies works hand in hand with ELA, especially with the comprehension. We're going to bring in some support so they can start working on SAR type, or the short answer response type of questioning and writing with the students, so they can better support the English department.
Coach Tremla, did you do anything in your classroom? I know at the engineering department, did we have any new concepts or staff development that we utilized in that classroom, or even in the math classroom?
Well, for the engineering department, a lot of our classes are fairly new. We're in our second year, so the teachers who teach the engineering courses were required to go to a 2-week training in the summer, which kind of got them started with the curriculum for the course. But what's cool in the engineering department, for our classes, we have an online LMS system where they continue to upload new staff development or professional development opportunities. So it's kind of cool because it's all online learning, which hopefully we can maybe take that kind of, situation in engineering and spread it out through other, departments, whether it's the
And
Health Science Academy.
It's great that you've said that, because the CTE professional development this summer, when we return for the new year, will be project-based learning. And we decided to do that because the Project Lead the Way teaches using that model.
Yeah.
And because there's been such success with the students, and they really respond well to that model. Project-based learning will be, we'll have that professional development for all the CTE teachers in the fall.
And also looking at, diversity of our campus, obviously we are a very diverse campus. I know, Ms. Heckman, you have a lot to do with, our English language learners in your classroom. What do you have to add on the staff development that you utilize in your classroom?
We have actually started a new program this year, which is called Journeys. It's an ESL reading program. And as a professional development, we've completely changed the way our PLCs are conducted at the district level and at the campus level. Instead of just, having a formal meeting when you are introduced different strategies, we had a model lesson, which I taught in my classroom, and all the 14 teachers from the district came to observe and give feedback. So that was quite new, and I think teachers are excited to share. It would be a good way to replace those sheltered module trainings that we conduct, and they're very dry and boring. When you see how it actually works in a real classroom, it brings more excitement, I think. So we'll keep working in that direction.
Awesome. All right, and kind of looking at the needs of this section of the campus improvement plan, we have 3 basic needs that we're looking at for next year, which is setting goals in the teacher self-assessment and goal setting. So just looking at that first need altogether, from this team, what are ways that we need to get teachers to, in my personal experiences, those self-assessments are done pretty quickly by teachers and don't really mean a whole lot. So when we're looking at what our needs are, what are ways that we can get those teachers to really set higher goals when we're talking about these needs that we have on our campus? Is there anything in particular that we think we can do?
I think specifically for English teachers, we can look at our data. We can look to see which concepts were overperforming, which ones were underperforming, and then target those, even if it's something formal or if it's just observing other teachers, other master teachers, even, other people on the team to try to improve, even if it's just a couple of percentage points. And then, whatever they decide is really data driven, and it's not, just one of the quick things, I got to do this really quickly. It's actually looking at their data, their students, and then you can look at, years past and see, have I grown at all, or is it just, am I stagnant? Because even if it's a good percentage but it's stagnant, that's another, good place to target.
I also think one of the main things is the time allocation that we have to look at for doing this with that English staff. I know next year our schedule changes quite significantly, and I believe our PLC time is totally gone, correct?
Yes.
So PLC time is gone. What are ways that we can allocate time in order for our English teachers in particular, as well as the rest of the campus, to do this and look at that data a little more frequently than we currently do?
Well, this last year and this year, we had PLC built in to our days.
Right.
And after feedback, the district took into account that, I guess, a number of things. And so what we have now are 6 PLC days that fall at the beginning of each 6 weeks. I guess it comes to about each 6 weeks. There's one in August, one in October, November, January, February, April. And it's a whole day. So we'll really get to work together and, maybe even across campuses.
Mm-hmm. Something else that's been mentioned is that you are to stay on campus till 3:15. So a lot of the teachers will be getting to, and I know they do this already, they'll get together from 2:45 to 3:15 on different days, and they work on their planning, their common planning. They may work on, I know specifically the math department, they will get together and look at student performance, and they will move students between teachers depending on what the student needs. Teacher may be stronger in one area or teaching a particular topic. They may move some students that are struggling into that room. And so they talk about their students and see which teacher could better support their needs.
Flexibility with scheduling is big for us. In the ESL world, we are trying to level our students because we know they all come in several levels, and it's very hard to address everybody's needs in the same classroom. The textbook's actually leveled, so to address to teach the certain textbook, to use a certain textbook, you cannot have several different levels of English language learners. So we're going to sit down at the end of the year or in the beginning of the next year. We're going to look at our TELPAS scores, and we're going to try to group them. So you can separate them in several periods, and you can actually monitor the data better this way. So you will not be scattered trying to, address everything in one period. So I think that's going to be a big change, positive change for next year.
Coach Tremmel, I know time's a big issue for you as well, and most of the coaching staff. How's that going to affect people who do after-school activities, clubs, and anything extracurricular at that?
Well, not having, those PLC days built in like we had this year, that is going to be a problem because, how many coaches do we have on this campus?
39.
39 coaches. So that, that's a lot of teachers across all subjects that are extremely busy. They have their classroom, their sports, their competitions. So having to, try to work that in, that's going to be, it's going to be pretty tough for them. But what's important to note is, they're going to have to find some way to meet and discuss their, academic needs, whatever subject they're in. And, it is going to be important to find a way to hold them accountable to doing that, because sometimes you get so caught up, you tell yourself, oh, I'll meet with this person later, and then all of a sudden it kind of gets pushed back. So for me, coaching year round, I'm going to have to give up some time here and there to meet with the other engineering teachers or whatever, the business department to decide what goals we want to reach, or but you have to find a way to keep them accountable, some way, because when you get busy, it's easy to kind of set that small step aside when you're not given that time.
And I think on those 6 days that we're setting aside for PLC, those need to be very structured and to make the most of that time, because that may be the only time that you have to meet with them.
And having that, like our business department, we have so many teachers who teach, different, classes, and some of them have 2 to 3 preps. So when they're sitting there and they're the only teacher, or there's only 2 teachers that teach a certain prep, they might meet for 10 minutes and discuss a little bit. But if it's not structured, they're not really gonna be talking about effective ways to improve their scores, get more certifications. It's easy to get sidetracked if there's not that structure. So I think that's very important. On those 6 days, there needs to be, some system put in place to make sure teachers are actually, talking about the important stuff. Because if you don't, there's no other time.
And I think to piggyback onto that, specifically in the English department, we talk about why a certain concept is underperforming or overperforming, or someone had really good scores on it, someone didn't. One of the things I would like to try to do is build the reflection piece in that math is already doing so well. They don't try to create new lessons every time something doesn't work. They look at what they have and they try to make it better, and they look at different aspects. What did you do? How did you say it? And to try to conserve some of that time, because 6 days out of the year is not a lot. But if we can just kind of tweak what we have and perfect that instead of trying to reinvent the wheel every single time, I think it'll save everyone a lot of time and energy and help it be more effective for kids, all kids.
And I think that still goes back to what she was talking about, structuring those with all our content specialists and department heads. No doubt about it. So that's kind of our first need as far as the campus improvement plan goes for that section. I still think we should quickly kind of talk about the other 2 needs, talking about students monitoring their own progress through the team's grade book, as well as I'm going to combine both of these together. Different ways we engage our students and motivating them to keep doing that, which I think is part of them looking at their grades. So I kind of think those 2 both go together. What are some different ways in which we can motivate our students? I know we've done a lot of things to make them college ready, to motivate them, put their pictures on the wall, show kids where they're going to colleges, put banners in the hallways, put them in the commons area. A lot of different things we've already done, but obviously this is still a need for next year as far as our improvement plan goes, to continue to motivate kids and find more ways to let them monitor their own progress and to get them more involved. Again, looking at in our campus improvement plan, it also has a long list of all the different social clubs that we have, which is a list of probably 30 plus different clubs and extracurricular activities that did not include choir, band, sports, anything of that nature. but there's also an obvious direct correlation between how they succeed in the classroom and being involved in those activities. So I think the general idea right here is to look at what are ways we can get them even more motivated, more kids involved, more kids engaged. If anybody has any suggestions to go along with this part.
I think it's important to make sure that, students understand that we understand grades are just a snapshot. They really are, and there's a lot more to progress than just what your grade is. And I think, it ties into our campus vision also, but if we can kind of relay to them that they're more than a grade to us, we're invested in their progress, we're invested in their future. When they start to feel that from us, I feel like they get a little more intrinsically motivated than just, oh, you got a good grade, because that's such an arbitrary number, really, when you think about it, especially when you think about a campus who doesn't share equity across all classrooms. If we can help get them intrinsically motivated, then that will make them want to do it, instead of us saying, oh, okay, time to check your grades today.
What are ways we can do that?
Well,
How do we get them motivated?
I know, that being a need, is very important, because when you look at, I'll just use my tennis team, for example. Most of them are, for whatever reason it might be, they're very, aware of their grades, their academics. They're always talking about it. They're always looking at it. Oh, I have this grade, that grade. I'm going to go talk to this teacher. So I think there's kind of some, evidence or, proof that when you're aware of your grades and you monitor them, that you...
And there is, like, some of the data that we've collected just from the athletic department as a whole is, in the springtime we have 13, out of our 13 sports, 9 of them are going on at one period of time. And our data from just football season, just basketball season, when those are the only things going on, we pass around 88% of all athletes. During that time frame, that number jumps to 93, 94%. So I think there's and that, doing the math again, that's equivalent to, I think it was 107 total kids that passed more than they did prior to being involved in athletics.
So,
No, just to add to it, I think the kids are not motivating themselves. There's no intrinsic motivation because they do not see the light at the end of the tunnel. Very often they have the trouble setting up long-term goals. And in my opinion, just that connecting them to maybe graduates from our high school, or even to avid club, avid participants, that will tell them, hey, there's a world out there that I could be a part of eventually. And in the past, we had a peer program when students who graduated, they actually came back to have guest speakers. And they, I've been here for almost 8 years, so I know some students who are in the great big name universities, and they could come and they could talk to the kids, and they could tell them that there are steps that they could take to being successful. It's not just the grade that you can turn your life around. So in a way, just setting up some kind of support system. So it's not just one teacher trying to initiate that, but maybe have it as an initiative, as a campus-wide initiative, connecting to the alumni.
One of the things we're looking at next year, they're having grade level meetings to where the grade level teachers, like all the freshman teachers, would meet with the freshman AP, and they can kind of discuss those kids. So the kids that were concerned, that are disconnected, the conversations, we can identify them and have conversations of how we can get them more connected. I know with our academy kids, at the beginning of the year, I meet with them progress report time, report card time. So they're aware that we're looking at their scores, we're looking at their habits, and we have conversations with them. Why are you having trouble in this class? Are you turning in all your work? Are you doing your homework? Are you studying for your tests? And I think that they do better when they know someone is paying attention. Definitely. And so many times, the kids just go throughout their day and no one's really, they're flying under the radar. And sometimes the teachers are like, well, they don't care. Well, maybe they don't feel like we care about them. So it's making those connections with them, let them know that, hey, I'm watching. I see you're doing better. And then before you know it, they're coming to you and saying, hey, I had all A's this report card. And they want that validation.
Because looking for ways to maybe get students motivated to create their own progress. Now these are suggestions, so they might not even work, or it would take a lot of effort from teachers. But you could, set a class that, all the students are required to take, or at some, whatever year or whatever class it might be, have a teacher who, maybe spends a little bit of time every week and talks about grades and talks about the importance of grades, or even allows the, like maybe a computer class, whether it's BIM, or allows the kids, a certain, 5 to 10 minutes every week to get on and check their grades and monitor their grades. And if they have questions, they can, ask the teacher, like, hey, can I go talk to this? Maybe something like that. Or, kind of maybe take this, this would be a lot of work, but like you said, that motivation and like somebody's watching them, split the kids up per grade to a teacher, kind of like a
homeroom?
Like a homeroom in a way, where that teacher is responsible for kind of monitoring those kids. Like, take my tennis team, for example. My job is to make sure that they pass and they're successful, and when they're missing something, I monitor their grades, and I go and say, hey, and a lot of times I think they just get caught up into social media, hanging out, and they don't realize I have a 50 in this class. But when I go and talk to them, they go make it up, and then, and they feel like, man, he cares because he's coming to talk to me. And a lot of these kids that aren't in an organization or a sport or a club, they might not even have the support at home. They don't have anybody who cares enough to say, hey, you have a 40 in this class, you're missing these assignments. And for all we know, they might not even have a way to look at those grades. They might not have a cell phone with internet. They might not have,
and that's what we're talking about. Even that's still one of our campus needs from the improvement plan is being able to help them monitor. So I think that's at least a decent recommendation.
Or
for
maybe find the kids who, not all the kids, but find the kids that need that, and give them to a teacher, and say, hey, do you want to be a monitor teacher?
It's like a mentor program.
A mentor, but for students, and take the kids who are in danger of failing, or maybe who haven't passed their STAR test. And now some teachers probably won't want to, but say, hey, would you want to be a monitor teacher? And here's a list of 30 kids. You watch these kids, you get to know them. They'll have someone they can come talk to. You'll meet with them, and maybe even work in, 10 or 15 minutes a week where that teacher can go meet with a couple of students. But I mean, that, it kind of.
And I think once you look at that list, you'll find it's not even 30 kids.
Yeah.
I know, like with our academy, we met in January, and we looked at the kids who might be struggling, and we found it was fewer kids than we thought. And when we assigned each teacher, it ended up being like 2 or 3 kids that they just needed to touch base with. Hey, are you getting all your work turned in? Do you need another copy of this? Do we need to get you to tutorials? And then just knowing that somebody's going to touch base with them.
And maybe start off with kids that, like I said, maybe have failed a class before.
The at risk.
At risk, or, obviously the kids who are making all A's, that's just going to, we don't need to give them to a teacher, but, and then see how it goes, maybe add more kids in the future. I don't know, I think it'd be
I know we tried that in the health science. I haven't seen the data. Do we know if that worked or not?
It did work.
Good.
It did work.
I know for the one I had, it did not, because I haven't seen them since, but.
There's extenuating circumstances.
Sure.
You do have kids that are homeless and, are unable to even get to school on time. And I know that's what what happened with that student. There were a couple of students that, I talked to one just the other day of, he had a B in an AP class, but at the academy classes that he had 3 and he failed 2 of them. And it came down to, he recognized, I just didn't try as hard as I needed to. So he knows what he needed to do, and we give him the opportunity, we need to readjust your schedule to better suit your needs. But we didn't take it away completely. It's like, yes, this is where we need to go now, but you still have the opportunity to return. It's kind of like the no pass, no play. You might not be eligible for one grading period, but that doesn't mean you're out completely. So there's always that hope.
Yeah.
I think in listening to everybody's, ideas, one of the things that's consistent is having conversations with kids. And I feel like, your tennis players pass with flying colors, my cheerleaders, it was never a question. It wasn't like, who is going to pass or not pass. It was like, okay, who's going to have a 99 and who's going to have, something lower. And they would freak out about that. And I know you said that in the spring, y'all's percentages went up as well. And I feel like, as coaches, we have the luxury of, having time to build in to talk about the kids, and I think that if administration, if it came from, our principal, that, hey, part of the vision is to focus on kids, not just math, not just reading, not just science, but kids. Build in time to talk about them, talk about what they want to talk about. If we, as a staff, heard that that was something that was acceptable, that if they were to come in and, hey, for 10 minutes we were just talking about our weekend, helping them put things in perspective, and just kind of letting them talk, and knowing that we do care and listening to them, I feel like that would kick off, a mentor type program where, even if we did assign kids to teachers, they would know that the expectation is really just to let the kids be heard.
Right.
It doesn't have any scores tied to it. It doesn't have any, anything you have to turn in tied to it. It's just, the expectation that
Just building relationships with kids
Right.
still. I mean,
With
that's-
teachers and between the students as well, like anything,
Yeah.
because we have a group, we have very high performing students and we have a low performing students. Finding a way, maybe somehow connecting these through the peer tutor program, that would, help them. We'll have students who need volunteer hours, and they would,
Right.
maybe they could give a week, like 1 hour per week to go to that depot and tutor somebody. I think that would be some response from our students.
And I know that we do have several senior students that are
Mhm.
going to work as tutors for the AVID program. So we do have a small population that we just need to build on.
In the English department, we always, we talk about tutorials every single time the STAR test is coming closer to the STAR test. We have to come up with effective tutorials. Maybe incorporating a peer tutoring into our tutorials will bring more students or participation.
Right, and this year, one English teacher had an interesting perspective on tutorials. She thought, the kids don't want to come to tutorials. They're, they didn't get it in 8 hours. Why do they even want to stay for 1 hour? And she turned it into like a game. She had snacks, and they played games, and they were all learning based, but she made it fun, and it was totally different. If you would have walked in the classroom, during tutorial time, you might have thought that they were not getting anything done,
Mhm.
but as it turns out, every single one of those tutorial kids passed their STAR test. And it's interesting because no other English teacher on that team can say the same for their groups of students. So I think it's just interesting to
It's
see.
amazing.
And we have to monitor that tutorial. I think we need to tweak what we have. Right now, kids will stay after for tutorials, and they need to make up an assignment.
Mhm.
We could have teachers in the cafeteria monitoring the students that need to make up an assignment, but we don't have anything built in for students that need to work on a skill.
Right.
And I think we need to have some targeted tutorials to build those skills.
Something we did on a campus that I was at previously was kind of along the lines of all this. It was a tutorial program at the end of the day, and we call it the JAG period because we're the Jaguars. And if they were passing their classes, they didn't have to go to tutorials. They were allowed to go to their homeroom. That last period of the day was a built-in homeroom, and they went to that room, they stayed there. Teachers were all given a list of the kids who were not passing. And if they were not passing, say, science, then Monday was a science day. Now you're going to that teacher. So I had my homeroom, which is a smaller class, but then I'd also have kids come to me that needed tutorials for my class. And it actually worked out really well. Then the kids who were passing everything at the progress report, then get a report card, were also then rewarded, going back to that part of it. And honestly, some were actually allowed to leave early from school. And again, as a little smaller community, you can do things a little bit differently. But again, something to maybe think about, doing the homeroom mentoring program with the reward system involved. I think those are all great recommendations we can make from this deal today. I think also with that, then we probably need to move on then to talking more about what our staff development opportunities are going to be, how we're going to allocate the funds and find some funding, which is where Ms. Duhan will probably come into play here a little bit more than we would. Again, going back to our campus improvement plan, some strategy that are already currently built into our schedule in our days is going to be the observations that we have, our PLCs that we have. They're going to go away, so that's going to be a new need for our campus. The instructional coaches, we have co-teachers, ESL aides, and our special ed aides, which obviously we have plenty of them on this campus. But then going to our needs is going to be more incorporation of technology in the classroom. We're going to need that PLC time back. I know we've somewhat already addressed that. More curriculum training and building success, laying the foundation. are some different things that we're kind of looking at. In your packet, you also have your second to last page is going to be a long list, or I guess third to last. I'm not sure where it is in there. Third to last. A long list of things that I also printed off that we can maybe talk about as far as the technology part of that goes, to add to some of those. But first, obviously, we need to talk about the funding of it, and where these funds are going to be allocated from our professional development, which, again, I think, Ms. Duhon, you can probably answer that more than we could.
I had control over the budget in my last district. In this role here, I do not. But what we did is we went through a needs assessment, much like we've done here. We looked at our data. We looked at where we were strong, where we were weak. We looked at the data from our AP and instructional coach walkthroughs and identified needs within a classroom. We did and developed our professional development plan based on all of those factors.
Okay.
So if we needed our English teachers to have training in writing, let's say they needed writing, then we would, again, you've got this pot of money that you have that you're able to prioritize. So you have to be diligent. You have to plan that, because what happens is you use it all up, and then you get to the end of the year, you still have people that need to be trained RICE, to go to RICE for AP training. You have the conferences that are held during the summer, and many times you've not budgeted properly. So you do have a pot of money that is set aside for professional development, but you do need to be strategic in how you're going to use it and how you're going to address it. You need to look at your your areas of need and rank them, and then that's how you.
Do you think per our campus improvement plan, this is a good ranking system right here? The technology being one, PLC time being two?
Is one that we need to look at. We have a lot of technology but the biggest complaint is the teachers don't want it, and because I don't think there's been adequate training in how to use it effectively. And it's not necessarily how to use it, it's how to manage it when it's in your classroom. The students love their iPads, and I think it's a battle for the teachers. So sometimes it's classroom management. What are some strategies that we could use to manage, when you come in the room, this is what you're going to do with your iPad. It doesn't come out until we tell you to take it out. We need some training on that. We assume that that's just common sense, but not necessarily the case. And then we have Promethean boards, we have iPads, we have active slates, and it just goes on and on. But we've never, we've had professional development on those items. The problem is we don't have follow through. So we do have to make sure that we are monitoring what we're giving professional development on. So it doesn't just, you have it, now you run with it. It's, let's revisit this every PLC. How is this working for you? Much like we talked about with our lessons in our core areas of analyzing how the kids did. It's the same thing with the teachers and their technology. Let's try this strategy and then come back. How did this work for you? Okay, what can we tweak? What can we do better to better use this strategy? I know we have a room full of active slates just sitting there. A lot of we've got so many teachers that they don't know what to do with them.
I don't even know what an active slate is.
Math teachers use it a lot. They write on it and then reflect it on the project.
Oh, I gotcha. So again, looking at the list of possible staff developments that we're going to have for next year in those built-in PLC days prior to school starts, some of them that I'd kind of highlighted that have to do with the technology, since we're on that subject, is the Google Forms data collection, iPad applications, using technology to create more rigorous lessons, creating a Google Classroom, Edmodo, Weebly, Facebook, Twitter, Google Drive, and creating tests in Eduphoria. Is there anything here that anybody agrees, disagrees, need to push more for us to be trained on? I also think one that I highlighted, it's not really technology, but was strategies for teaching bell to bell, which I think is kind of a need for a lot of our teachers on campus as well. I think, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else, sometimes ending a little bit early. 5 minutes left, hey, you guys are good, which I don't think is a good habit to get into. I think a lot of us on campus, again, myself included, need to get better at. Is there anything on here you think we need to, even active slates on there, to promote more with our staff?
I do, and right here, like creating tests in Eduphoria. Eduphoria is on here. Eduphoria is a tool that I feel like we're definitely underutilizing. There are districts that teachers know what to do. They know all kinds of different things to do in order to get data, and I don't feel like everybody here, myself included, is very savvy in Eduphoria. And along with that, I feel like we need to focus on Kurzweil. Kurzweil is the system that our district is going to use to test the STAR accommodated. Okay. And one of the campuses in our district has moved all of their testing throughout the entire year to Kurzweil instead of just waiting till STAR, and their pass rate was 100% higher than the district pass rate.
Oh, wow.
Because the kids have practiced, using Kurzweil. So I think that if we can kind of get in there and kind of start working with it, at least English and math, and seeing maybe if a teacher can see what it's going to look like for the student, and the student can get on and kind of play with it before the actual day of EOC or whatever test they're taking, I think that would help too. I don't know what the rights are. I don't know how that would actually work, but I feel like if we could get some training in Kurzweil and how to use it more in the classroom, I think that would help.
I'll just chime in real quick. I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but being in a computer lab, obviously I have a lot more benefits, and most teachers have access to a lot more things. But just looking at this, like the Google Forms and data collection is huge. You can do so much stuff with Google. You can upload, you can limit the paper, and the best part is the students can have access to a lot of that stuff from their phones, from their iPads, and then just teachers learning, like she said, Edmodo, Eduphoria, Google Drive. I think all of those are crucial, but I think the problem that we have, which I do it as well, even though I'm in a computer lab, I think we have to find a way to kind of get the teachers to where they have to use some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. Because, that's the way the kids are going, technology. Right. And, I know a lot of teachers, aren't familiar with it. But, like you said, we waste a lot of money on trainings. And there's been trainings that I've gone to that I haven't followed up with, so I'm guilty myself. But I think if we kind of hold teachers accountable for using some of this, like not all of it, but some of it, maybe start slow. Hey, you need to focus on one of these this year. I think eventually when the teachers have to use it, they'll learn it. They're all smart.
It's all about practicing.
I don't know about all of them.
Right.
Not all of them, but
and the district has resources allocated to help that. There are technology specialists that are willing to come walk us through it, hold our hand, help us set up everything. I had a meeting with one a while back, and she was like, hey, I'll come meet with your whole English team. So I think part of it too comes from administration. Like if we know that, like you said, if that's an expectation, then we're more likely to follow through with that.
I think teachers will be excited to use technology if there are readily available, prepared lessons out there. Because every time you use technology, you have to create something. I know the Promethean, like we use it for annotation in English, we use it for something else, but a lot of times you have to either create a lesson or you have to go and search for a lesson, and that takes a lot of time. So if we have the content specialists and we have technology like resources, why don't we just let them work together and create specific lessons that will be available maybe on a shared drive? And if it's there, everybody will use it. And like Aaron mentioned earlier, we have some wonderful things that we know work. We don't need to reinvent the bicycle every time. We just need to make it available to the teachers. So.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about Trembles for a second real quick, too. We talked about more accountability. When I worked in another district, again, we were held in KDISD, I think I can say that. We were held so accountable based on our lesson plans we submitted. Here, I know Ms. Duan has struggled with CTE teachers not even turning theirs into her with no specific format. All we had to do was send her a Word document or an email, and we still have teachers that don't do that. We were held accountable and written up if we did not. And it was such a specific format that we were even had to put in there what technology we're using, what teaching strategies we're using, what we were doing for the lesson, what homework they had. Like, it was very specified. And, like, we have to have ours turned in by Monday morning. Well, ours had to be done Friday before we left. And, I mean, there's a reason Katy ISD is pretty high on the list for good schools and good districts, because those teachers are held accountable. So I personally still believe we can be held a lot more accountable as teachers on this campus.
I know in my last district we kept our lesson plans in Eduphoria, and as an administrator, when I did my walkthroughs, when I clicked on that teacher, the lesson plan was there, and I could immediately, if it wasn't there, just send an email, hey, sorry I missed your lesson plan, can you get that turned in? And so that it was immediate. And two, I knew exactly what I should have been looking for in that lesson. So when you don't have lessons turned in, the administrator walking through, they don't know whether you're on pace or not. So yes, accountability is huge.
Yeah.
And we do need to come up with something uniform. And
I agree.
And develop a system to where it is equitable for all.
I got you. Last, real quick, also, how are we going to evaluate all the staff development that we're going to try to recommend and put into place? I mean, right now we do on the Eduphoria the little survey system to say what we got out of it, what was good, what was bad. Some give the cute little ticket out. Is there anything we need to add to the evaluation process?
I think we need to target. You pick a few. Don't choose too many topics for the professional development, because when you implement too much, nothing's done well. So if you choose fewer topics and then monitor those well, I think it's more effective.
I agree. I think you just start small, focus on certain things, and find ways to hold.
So based on our needs, I think we still kind of need to recommend more technology training and a lot of things for those PLC times that we're starting the school year off with. So I think overall, our recommendations, that we'll take out of this meeting today, based on our areas of needs from the campus improvement plan, is number one, looking at our data more specifically and making sure we allocate that time for it. That PLC time that we'll have to those built-in days is going to be a big part of that, as well as making sure they're more structured and using those time frames, getting with our content specialists and department heads to make sure that those are utilized properly, to look at the data and make sure those teachers, again, are more engaged through the process, helping students be more motivated, getting them to look at their own grades a little more closely, and making sure that those are structured to where they set their goals high in their initial, PDOS and T-tests that they have to do online. We also talked a little bit about the grade level meetings and the connections that we can have with the kids, hoping that will engage students more, and hoping through our staff developments we can get that done as well. Possibly a mentor teaching program, something that we can maybe get the kids specific teachers, specific times to meet with teachers, to give them more accountability put on them. Again, something that we need to look at for teachers to do that. And then last is what staff developments we're going to look at closer, which is going to be based on our needs again from our campus improvement plan, which will be technology. Considering, again, we have the one-to-one iPads, we need to be able to use those and manage those more in the classroom, which will go to those staff developments and recommending some of the ones that we talked about, the Google Drive, the Cursewell, and managing classrooms bell to bell in order for them to use all those things. And again, the evaluation process, making sure we just focus on those ones that we talked about today more specifically. So I think overall, those are the recommendations we're going to make from this meeting today. Does anybody else have anything else to add? Well, good deal. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Hi, this is Greg again. I'm here to talk about my reflection for my leading video. So hopefully you just watched the actual conference itself, the meeting that we had on the campus of Sterling High School as it related to our needs on the campus improvement plan and how they related to staff development on our campus and some recommendations that we would make to our principal to help improve and meet those different needs. So again, just kind of like I talked about in the introduction, the people that were actually attended the meeting were mainly people who were a part of the campus improvement plan, so we already had a good idea and good background and knowledge of what we were getting into for this conference. But reflecting a little bit upon my leadership abilities and how I led this meeting and this conference as it related to these things, some of the positive things I thought I did really well was, first of all, the organization of the whole thing. All of our members were very well communicated to as far as where we were going to do it, what time we were going to do it, how far in advance they were given this notice, and including a follow-up email that I'd sent to them. Again, just to hopefully make sure those committee members, have that trust in the leader, to make sure they know that I'm going to be organized in order to host this meeting, so that they know they're getting into something that's worthwhile and of value. So I thought that was number one of my strong points for leadership in this conference. My second was my overall organization and agenda that they were presented with. 2 days ago, each of them, I handed to them personally a packet of information, which included, number one, our agenda. I have 6 items on our agenda that I'm looking at right now, which included the introduction of the members, the purpose of the meeting, the campus improvement plan and how it related to staff quality, recruitment, and retention, the improvement plan with student achievement data and our needs. And then number 5 was our effective and relevant staff development opportunities. And our last one was our recommendations for further research or our recommendations to the principal as far as meeting those needs with staff development options. So this packet of information I thought was very well organized. So given those different points on the agenda, what I gave them in this packet is maybe 10, 12 different pages. The first several of them, part of our campus improvement plan, the data that we input into the system, which again, most of our members were part of the campus improvement plan process. So we're already very familiar with it, but I wanted to make sure that they still had it in writing in their packet. So when we had this meeting, they were still organized enough, again, thanks to the leadership ability, to have that in front of them so they can talk about it and be able to have that information without stopping the meeting and taking away additional valuable time for them to go look those things up in the middle of the meeting. So the campus improvement plan, the different needs that we felt the campus needed, was in front of them during this entire process. I also printed out our school snapshot, which obviously includes our report card. That included a lot of our data as far as testing goes, our star scores, as well as our enrollments in diverse populations, SAT, ACTs, dropout rates. All of those were in front of them in case they ever got brought up, and they were very, very little, but we already very well aware of what our needs were on the campus, so that wasn't really something that was brought back up on a large basis during the meeting, but it was still something I felt was important for them to have in front of them. And another one of the important things that they had in front of them was a list of 34 different possible options for staff development on our campus, again relating to our needs, which ended up being more into English literacy and also into technology. We kind of talked a lot about how technology and utilizing the technology in our campus was something that a lot of our teachers needed to have more training on. Including our PLC time, our scheduling, which are things that are being taken away. So we were trying to find times to allocate that our campus could use to do these trainings, which again, we're still working on what we're doing in our before school starts. In our PLC time, we have 6 built-in days now into our next year's schedule rather than having those meetings during the school year, which is going to be a bit of a challenge, but things that we felt were important to utilize that time for was essentially what a lot of these things in this packet, what I thought was useful for. So again, as far as leadership ability goes, I felt like the organization of the meeting, the packet, the communication to the rest of the members of the leadership team, I thought those were some of my strong points. I also felt like my questioning strategies was a strong point. A couple of them coming into this meeting were a little weary as far as, what do they need to have prepared? What are things that they needed to talk about? What are things they needed to present? And, I tried to make them feel at ease with it as much as humanly possible by telling them it'll be well prepared. I said, you'll be fine. We'll probably ask you some questions, from your expertise. Just to pretty much provide information to the group so that we can kind of come up with an ultimate decision and an ultimate recommendation to the principal. especially early in the meeting when you watch a little bit of the beginning parts of it. Some of them were still a little nervous to talk out loud and participate in the meeting. And as you can tell, I kind of get some more out of them as we move forward. And then later on, I don't do as much talking myself because they feel a little more comfortable contributing to the group. So I felt like as the leader of this group, I thought I did a good job of bringing different concepts out and making sure that every one of them felt like they were needed and they were important to talk about with the group and their different areas of expertise. So those are some of the strong points I thought I had. Some of the weaker points I think I could have improved on was number one, kind of watching the video over again. My eye contact is a little off. In the video, you can see me kind of fidgeting quite a bit through my data and through some papers and a couple other distractors that happened throughout it. I think I needed to probably do a little better job of focusing on the speaker. Again, I felt like I was well prepared, but as certain things kind of filtered through my head, I started fidgeting a little bit more with my papers as new ideas, new concepts, and not really the end of the world to do such a thing, but I felt like my focus could still be a little more on what they were talking about rather than going back through onto the next train of thought and the next part of the meeting, which I already knew what was going to be the next part of the meeting. So I don't think it was really necessary for me to fidget as much as I did. I also think I could have done a better job presenting my information. I really let them bring a lot of different things to the table. And there's a couple times where I intervened and I threw out my standpoint, my opinions, but I was trying so hard to get more out of them earlier on that I think I kind of failed to talk a little more about my parts of it. Especially since my part of the campus improvement plan still kind of went back to the first part of staff quality, recruitment, and retention. I hit some points as far as athletics was concerned. And things that, we talked a little about student engagement. We talked about, motivation of the students and things that our staff, can improve on in order to get students more engaged. And I kind of talked a little bit about the athletic side of it, and I threw out some statistics that I've gathered being an assistant athletic coordinator on campus. But that didn't come till later on, and I didn't hit quite as much early when we were talking about staff quality, recruitment, and retention that I probably should have. I tried to lean on them a little bit more to get them involved, where, again, looking back on it and reflecting on it, I think I probably could have done a better job of giving more information from the data that I collected during the campus improvement plan process, and then letting them kind of reflect on that or talk about that in the initial parts of it. Again, so that's kind of a strong point and a weak point gone together, where I thought I did a good job bringing some things out of them, but at the same time, I don't know that I contributed enough information at the beginning of it, but I did later on. So I think I improved even throughout the entire process as we all became more comfortable with each other, and I think that's something that's not necessarily a bad part of leadership, but I think I can improve on that as well. With all that said, overall, I still feel like I did a very good job. I think as a leader, I think I do a good job of kind of owning a room, of sitting down and being a leader and getting everybody's attention. I don't think that's ever been a problem, nor will it ever be a problem, which is kind of why I think I'm in the position that I am right now, as a head basketball coach and assistant athletic coordinator, where it doesn't bother me to sit down and lead other people and get their attention and have things prepared for them. So I think that's just overall something that I'm strong in, but in improving things as I go forward, I still think my focus on the speaker is something I really need to improve on. And I think I'll just even continue to get better and better with the collection of data and the presentation of that information. And again, a lot of that's going to come with experience when I have more experiences to talk about and become more involved and more familiar with the things such as campus improvement plan and the staff development and the allocation of those funds, which is again something that we really leaned on our academic dean in this meeting for, which was really awesome to have her in there to help us through this process, because she was filled with a lot more in-depth knowledge of how those things work, so she was able to give us that information. So I think that was a very positive thing, to make sure she was invited and was present in this meeting as well. So overall, again, this experience was a good experience for me to lead in something that was non-athletic, because I've done that for several years already. So this being a non-athletic leadership meeting, I think it really is a very good experience for me, and I learned a lot from it. So moving forward, I'm just going to keep getting better at hosting these leadership meetings in order to continue my career and hopefully get accomplished what I need to get accomplished. So this will be the end of my reflection for my leadership video. Thank you.